Hey YouTube. So on today's video, we're going to talk about all the problems, every single one of them on every legal stage in Melee. Now, if you enjoy this series of me just rambling, I'm going to be going through pretty thorough detail of all the stages, of what they matter, how they change the competitive landscape of Melee. Please let me know. I'm really down to do more of these. I really just enjoy putting on videos like this myself. So I like doing type of content I listen to myself. And yeah, this is the second part series. The first one will be linked in the description, of course. And this one is going to tackle the infamous Pokemon Stadium, which is an absolutely terrible stage to play competitive matches on in the vanilla Melee.
Did he die through the tree?
He just fell through the stage.
That happens.
This is stupid.
And hey, if you're like me and you just like putting something on in the background while you work, while you play, so you have something to listen to, why don't you check out today's sponsor, Audible. Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment all in one place. As some of you guys know, if you've been following the stream, I've really gotten into basketball, playing it and watching it ever since last year. And what I've really been interested in is not only the sport, but also just the competitive mentalities and all the literature and all the movies and all the series behind it. And so what I've been listening to on Audible is Phil Jackson's 11 Rings. It's about how he coached people such as Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Shaq, and how that led him to be a part of 11 championships as head coach. And for me, this is just super interesting to listen to. So if you're interested in giving that a listen or anything else in Audible's massive selection of audiobooks, podcasts, and everything else, why don't you give audible.com/Leffen a visit, or you can just text Leffen to 500 500. That's audible.com/Leffen. Thank you, Audible. All right. So next up, we have Fountain. Fountain is a stage that I feel like is very, very rare to have as your favorite. It's probably the stage that the least amount of people have played competitive matches on that is actually legal. And one of the reasons for this is because this stage is not playable in doubles. Doubles was very, very popular, especially before. And if you take 4 characters, especially if one of them is ICs, and you play on this stage, you will actually experience frame drops. They don't always happen, but they really, really suck, and they make the game look all glitchy. And yeah, it's just a bad time. You can kind of notice it if you have played a lot of Melee. But even someone casual can usually tell when they're playing that this stage does not feel good when you're playing 4 people on it, especially if you're playing ICs or even a character like Marth or Ganondorf, which have physics-based objects. So Marth has his cape, pretty primitive, but for its time, very advanced, like physics-based. It like kind of floats around depending on how he moves, which many people probably haven't thought about. But yeah, this one will actually take up more computer power and so make the game lag a bit more as well. So because this stage was never legal for doubles due to this lag issue, most people, when they have additional rules, they will do random stages, right? And they would take Fountain off due to someone on that setup at some point playing doubles, taking it off the random rotation, right? So you can just pick random every time. And then simply because it's also not the most favorite of anyone's stages, people just simply forgot to turn it back on. But these days, especially due to Slippy and net play being very much singles focused, is much more common to see Fountain. But I remember this being definitely the most hated stage for very many players back in the day because of this reason, that they just hadn't played on it a lot, and due to some other things we're gonna get to now. Basic stuff. Fountain is a stage with moving platforms. Above average ceiling, but actually not higher ceiling like Blast Zone than Battlefield. And this is a very, very common mistake people make. If you're hitting someone from the ground level, like right here, and trying to kill them upwards, you actually do not die later here than you do on Battlefield. However, this stage is a very, very tall stage. So technically, it is a taller in terms of Blast Zones because you can go further down here on Fountain without dying than you can on Battlefield. So if you hit someone down here and try to kill them upwards, yeah, you're gonna need a lot more percent on them than if they were on the very, very bottom of Battlefield and try to kill someone upwards. But that is actually bringing us to the next problem. Fountain has average side blast zones. However, because it is such a tall stage, the camera does not actually follow very properly. You might notice that if you jump out here, very quickly do you get into this zooming glass, zoom in bubble. You essentially go off camera. Why does this matter? Well, first off, it makes it a lot harder to keep track of where you or your opponent who's off stage is. A lot of the time people think that they're very far and try to sweep spot the edge, but instead end up on stage because it's just very, very hard to tell exactly where the opponent is. And sometimes they can control their drift and you actually cannot tell if they're like very close or a little bit further away. Most stages do not have this issue because whenever you are actually off camera, you're so far away that like the only thing you should be doing is like holding towards the stage and trying to recover, or you will just straight up not make it back to stage, period. But on Fountain, this is a bit more of an issue. It's not a big problem, I wouldn't say, but it can affect matches for sure, and people have kind of learned how to play around it at this point. It is also worth noting that when you're off stage, if you're off stage for long enough, you will actually start taking percent. I think this is a mechanic made in some stages, such as like with walk-off, such as Mushroom Kingdom, to make you not try to camp in the like off camera, but it, you know, can actually affect competitive matches, specifically on Fountain. If you're charting a Firefox like I just did, you might take a couple extra percent for doing that. Next up, we have how tall the stage is. Now, you can actually wall jump even down here and make it back. And this is not really something that's very common. And I wouldn't really even say it's a problem, more like a feature of this weird stage. But you have Peach. Peach can actually, by using side B over and over at a specific timing, infinitely stall down here. Now I'm terrible at doing this, especially on this controller. Yeah, there we go. But yeah, essentially, if you do this properly, you can actually infinitely stall without using your double jump or float or your up B by the very, very bottom of the stage. And you can actually still make it up as long as you save your double jump. And the reason why this is banned is because with the ruling that if you have more stocks than your opponent or less percent, when the timer runs out, you'll actually be awarded the win in this game. So you could technically kill the opponent one time and then go down there and stall where the opponent actually can't interrupt you really well. At least most characters can't. And then just run out the timer for 8 minutes. Now, thankfully, we're not idiots. So the Melee community pretty quickly decided to ban stalling this way with Peach Bomber. And for any other stage, this never happens. And even with Peach, it's not really something you do see very often. But sometimes this can be used for a player to just run out a couple extra seconds without actually being against the rules. The big thing with Fountain, though, that everyone has an issue with, at least as far as I know, is that the platforms randomly move. Now, how random is this, you might ask? Like, is there 10 different, configurations? Sometimes they can disappear completely. When you start a match, they will always start in the same position, right? One slightly lower than the other. And I think this layout is really interesting and cool. However, it very quickly changes. 10, 20, 30 different configurations, 40 different patterns. No, there's actually, I think, someone counted them all, and there's, not by hand, but there's 163,000 different patterns for the Fountain platforms on how they will move, when they will move, how much they will move, which one. This essentially means that they're completely RNG. And there's no actual realistic way to ever, using the timer, using whatever, knowing when or how a platform will move. And this can actually impact gameplay very much. Aside from just different characters liking different heights of platforms, and characters such as Marth liking when there's no platforms at all, when these platforms move, they can very, very often interrupt or change combos. As these platforms disappear, they can make your jump startup like stop, and as they come up, they can make your jump get eaten. They can make rolls that are supposed to go full length, get caught by the platform essentially, and go almost nowhere. And we have a great clip showing this as well from a tournament less than a year ago. game 5 situation. Sunsei up against H-Box. About to make a huge upset.
That was cool. That was cool.
It's grabbed.
Oh no.
H-Box misses the up throw follow-up. And Sunsei's like, okay, I'm going to roll away. Because H-Box cannot rest me if I roll away.
Oh no!
But the platform randomly appears.
Oh no!
Making his roll go nowhere. And H-Box can easily grab him and kill him. And eventually ended up winning the set. And as they're moving as well, if you're grabbing someone, there can be multiples of like small glitches when you're throwing someone as the platform is moving, if you're hitting someone as the platform is moving. They're just really, really awful. And I really wish there were at least a tell that a platform would be moving, or that they would be at the very least appearing, because platforms appearing, I would say, out of nowhere is the biggest problem, rather than them disappearing or moving up and down slightly. Some people have suggested that we should mod the stage and either add tells or make them appear at a minimum height. So this means that if you're standing on the ground, you won't be caught by the platform going up. It will just appear like inside of your character, or like above your character's like ground collision box, which means that you wouldn't be, rising with it, and you will be able to continue as is instead of being pushed up like it just was. This would prevent things from screwing up combos as much, but personally, I would like both that and some kind of tell, like maybe water starting to stream out of the ground, or disappearing if it's going down, like 2 seconds or 3 seconds, whatever, before they're actually moving. I think that would be cool. Outside of that, there's actually one very, very tiny extra thing on Fountain, and it is, you see how there's grass here? At the very, very end of both sides of the stage, there is grass. This actually changes things. In Melee, grass has different properties than regular stage structure, basically. So this will very, 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 very slightly change how you will move when you wave dash, for example. And we'll get to more of this when we're on the actual grass stage from Pokemon Stadium. And this can also give the glitch of when you shine someone, very, very rarely, they will have absolutely no hit stun from the shine and be able to act or punish you from actually hitting them with the shine. But this also gives you an ability to do something that's called as a T-drop, where you basically use the fact that it is grass and it functions a little bit differently to instantly turn around and fall at the same time and grab the edge. And this is, for many characters, this is the single fastest way of grabbing the edge in the entire game. And it's only available on Fountain. And it's a 1-frame timing as well, which is very, very hard. But it's not the hardest of 1-frame timings, and it can definitely be used competitively. And you see occasionally some people go for it. Most of the time, though, I feel like they do it to style rather than practical. Like they need to do it, but still worth keeping in mind. Next up, we're going to the infamous, the most well-known stage of all, Final Destination. Final Destination is iconic, and it is actually the least objectively flawed stage in the entire game. Yet it is also the most hated competitive stage. How does that work? Let's try to explain this. First of all, slightly lower than average ceiling, but regular sideways blast zones. That's not really where the problem is. Okay, let's go through just how the stage layout works in terms of like these walls and such. These are a little bit deceiving, where it looks like there's no stage here, but if you look very, very closely, you can actually see that there is some stage here, and you can wall jump on parts of this, which is a little bit hard to tell, but you pretty quickly understand how this works. But yeah, kind of hard to see, kind of a little bit wonky. Some characters, when they aim their up Bs, like Fox, it kind of looks like they're almost teleporting because of how the slope is transformed. But you do not get stuck on this one like you might on Dreamland or on Battlefield. So as you see here, this angle that the Firefox went on is a little bit weird and not completely intuitive either. It kind of looks like it's avoiding the stage by a lot more than what's actually there. And again, this is kind of a tell on how the stage actually behaves rather than how you think it behaved. Now, there's also another case that is Fox specific as far as I know, where, as you saw right there, I was grabbing the edge and then I wall jumped. This is called a Rocky wall jump, and it's basically like a billion different things that go into this. But essentially, when you grab the edge in a very specific way with Fox, specifically only on FD out of the legal stages, some of the banned stages have this as well. If you press away, you will instantly wall jump. And this can actually be used, to do some complicated edge guards, to use the extra height and, jump you get. And you're actually invincible as well when you wall jump in this game for 15 frames, I believe. However, this can also lead to a lot of accidental self-destructs due to you pressing away, trying to do a double jump down air, but instead you wall jump away, and this downer that you now tried to do became a wall jump downer, and then you just fall down. Or you can try to ledge dash, which is an advanced technique to get back to the stage with invincibility. This wall jump can make you air dodge into nothingness. Okay, so generally what you will want is a ledge dash like this, but instead you get Draki wall jump, and you get that, and you just die. But in general, these are not any real significant problems. FD is a wide stage, which leads to camping, but the real problem and the reason why this stage is so disliked by many top competitors is that this stage has no platforms. For a casual, might say, oh wow, variety, how amazing, isn't it cool that we can play on a stage with no platforms? And even as a casual, I think FD was many people's, myself included, favorite stage, just because it had the less shit on it, It's just you and your opponent, man to man, no items, FD, Fox only. What no platforms do is that it greatly simplifies some parts of the game, both in the way that you cannot use platforms in neutral, you cannot use them to attack, cannot recover on them, you cannot, use them at all, but they specifically also changed how punish and combos work. So generally, Fox has to up throw Falco, then read which way he's going to attack, how he's going to land on the platform, and then try to do a complicated follow-up there. But on FD, you actually have guaranteed follow-ups where you basically just grab them and throw them up, and then you grab them and throw them up. And they can do things to make this harder, and it's definitely not easy, but the higher up you go, the fact that they don't actually have a true way of escaping or even making you guess makes very many matches on this stage kind of degenerate, at least in a subjective way. Basically, the character that has the chain grab or the easy juggle combo, Falco himself can, for example, pillar combo Fox or Falcon or himself very, very easily on this stage. That other character is going to try very, very hard to not get hit by that hit or that big combo starter or that grab. And this makes for very one-sided and honestly sometimes degenerate gameplay where one character can essentially spam grab. Marth. Oh, sorry about that. And yeah, because of this, it's often the most polarizing in terms of matchup numbers. It is almost always the strongest counterpick for one of many matchups in this game. And specifically, as I just implied, Marth. Marth on FD is clearly the strongest counterpick. Basically, no other character uses the stage as well as him. He gets access to a lot of different chain grabs, and in general, just due to how his range and his dash dance works, and how far his grab reaches, he just plays neutral on this stage incredibly well. Now, that's not to say that he doesn't have any matchup where it's close to even, but many matchups swing from even matchups to 70-30 or 80-20 matchups. Where the Marth is essentially expected to win the large majority of every single competitive match on the stage. Even outside of Marth, the stage is still very swingy. Many lower tier characters, not low tier, lower tier, like Pikachu, Dr. Mario, DK have chain grabs on the stage as well. Even very bottom tier characters as Pichu can actually chain grab sear to death many top tier characters on the stage. and just in general, generally seen as the most boring, simplistic stage. Generally, when you hear people talk about banning a stage, these days you actually hear about them wanting to ban FD instead of one of the many other stages with their other problems. Additionally, when this stage has gone on for a bit and transforms here the background, this is a little bit hard on the eyes for some people. Personally, I have never ever thought about this, and I personally think this effect of like FD being blinding is far more noticeable in later Smash games, but it is something to keep in mind, and there does actually exist mods out there that make it never transition to this version of the stage, like the background. So yeah, that's really all we have for FD. Very controversial stage. Some people love it. My personal opinion is that it's completely fine in the matchups that it's fine on, and it's honestly interesting variety for those matchups. But for the stages it is not fine on, it is very, very toxic and quite a board to play on. And that is one of the reasons why you might want to advocate for bans in best of 5, so where you can ban it in some matchups, but in the matchups where it's completely fine, you can simply not ban it and ban another stage that might be more toxic or more annoying. All right, so we have our final stage, Pokemon Stadium. Pokemon Stadium has a lot of problems. It is easily the stage that most people wanted to ban until very recently, and that is due to the fact that it used to, at least not on net play, used to transform. Before we get to the transformations and that whole thing, let me just talk about standard properties of the stage before we get into that whole mess. Pokemon Stadium is low ceiling, so it's very easy to kill people upwards, making it a strong counter pick for some characters like Fox, who like to kill upwards, but who don't necessarily want a stage like Yoshi's where both the ceiling and the side blast zones are both tiny. And it is actually also the widest stage in Melee. Many people think that FD or Dreamland is wider, but Pokemon Stadium is actually the widest stage, which does mean that you can run away and camp on it a little bit better. But honestly, due to how the platforms are formed, this is not something that happens too often. Right, I'm gonna restart on before we get to the whole transformation really quick. Next up, the side platforms are a little bit deceiving. This black part right here, you can actually not land on, and it makes you think you can, and they look like you can. So sometimes when you up throw characters, they will just barely miss and go straight through the black parts. And especially on badly lit, CRTs, this effect is greatly multiplied. Whereas on, here it is, reasonable on a well-lit, HD monitor with an upscale game. It is not nearly as hard to see if they're going to land on the platform or not. Outside of that, fine stage. Everything on stage is completely fine. The stage layout is very interesting, very unique, with 2 platforms and no top platform. There does come some problems here though with the ledges. The ledges are very deceiving. You can actually slope on this part, but all of this below here is very, very hard to see because of how the camera functions. Camera is slightly too high on Pokemon Stadium, probably as a result of the fact that it is so wide, and that it's also trying to keep this background here screen that like counts like things such as the current leader and stuff like that no one actually looks like in a game. And this makes it so that the camera is too high. It makes it very, very hard when you're recovering here and you just can't see what's happening. What's even more annoying is that this, in combination with how this stage actually is constructed here, makes for a very, very, very deceiving experience and like frustrating experience trying to recover from below Pokemon Stadium. Essentially, I'm gonna draw how this stage actually functions, so you guys can see how it actually looks. All right, we're going 20xx. Right, so this is how the stage looks like in actuality, right? You can kind of see how it slopes. Looks kind of weird, but it's not really weird until you really go back and forth with how it looks like when you're normally playing and how it looks when you're, when you actually know how it looks like. Pretty safe to say that it's very, very, very deceiving. And many people, even pro players, really don't use this stage's slopes and the structure of the stage to its maximum potential because of all of this, like how hard it actually is to see in an actual match what the hell is happening. But yeah, overall, makes it a little bit harder to recover an edge guard, especially when you're not familiar, but it's not the biggest deal. What is the big deal then, Leffen? This is the big problem, right? This stage will approximately, it's a little bit random, but I think it's like at a couple set timings at around 1 minute into the game, it will flash a symbol, 1 of 4, and then it will transform into a different stage. And each one of these stages have massive, massive issues, right? First off, this is probably the one that people have the least problems with, or maybe, I don't know, it's the grass one. So this one has weird height platforms. It has slopes. There's a ton of different glitches on the windmill. You can grab people and it will cancel the grab midway through. You can boost yourself. You can recover onto the windmill. Texture is weirdly on the windmill, and like as it's spinning, it changes like from an actual stage or like something you can stand on to nothingness very quickly. But this windmill is still one of the most liked stages. And that is with it having a lip on the right side as well, where you can get stuck. Okay, so here's the grass stage. This is the second least hated stage. However, this still has a lot of problems. Again, there's slopes here. You can see him go up as you go onto from the normal part of the stage to here, which has many of the same issues such as Yoshi's has. The fact that it's grass has different friction. So when you wave dash, you will go further. This will screw up combos such as wave shines. And this will mean that people slide too far and it would be hard to control your spacing and a lot of small things. But generally, I would say that the biggest problem of the grass stage is not the platform structure. The platform structure is fine. But it is the ground structure where it's very sloped. And sometimes this means that you can up smash someone right here and they're supposed to go straight up. But because of the slope, they get caught and survive an up smash at like 200%, which never ever would happen normally. And then as well as this platform, this little bush is really annoying because it is actually a sloped platform. This is actually like a very, very sloped platform and not straight at all. Again, if we go back and forth between the looks, it's just like, it's a lot wider than you think it is, and it's very steeply sloped, which can lead into some very awkward combos and, you know, dropped situations. So overall, grass is definitely not the worst stage you can get in a competitive match of Melee, but still definitely a very flawed stage. And while we're at it, let's talk about the transformation stage, or the transformation state. What is that, you may ask? Well, when a stage is going to transform about a minute in or so, the process of which this happens is that the side platforms come down and then the stage comes up. However, it is slightly glitched in how it does this. And before the actual new stage comes up, the platforms are still there and can still screw things up, as well as having the problems of fountains platforms that they just simply, like, you know, the platforms are sinking, so that alone will screw up combos. This means you can get stuck on them, and because the platforms are on, you can do this weird glitch where you shield up over and over and over and over, which is just really silly, but I guess a little neat trick. But generally, the problem is that you don't really get a long warning, although you do get some warning that the stage is going to transform. And then pretty quickly, it starts breaking like combos, starts destroying the surface, and very quickly, something new awful comes up. But yeah, as you can see here, I kind of get stuck every time I try to run off the platform, and then a giant ass tree comes up. Which brings us to our next lovely transformation, the rock transformation. Second most hated stage and absolutely broken in basically every way. This stage features 3 different spots where you can get wave shine infinite by Fox. You can wave shine infinite them here, but this sometimes glitches out because this very, very heavily sloped area, like this pool. I don't know. What do you call this? This hole, this trap hole. It's very annoying. If you jump while you're going up the slope, it is so heavily sloped that sometimes the jump will just not happen like that. Very annoying, can make you drop combos, tournaments, everything. This platform here is kind of awkward, but overall the least offensive part of this stage. Again, slopes everywhere from the stage. Another slope on this part. This tree here, again, a wall which just completely disrupts gameplay and often leads to one person just camping and keeping the other person away from that side of the stage, and the other one just standing here stalling out this side. However, I generally think that stalling out this transformation is the least game-breaking thing you can do, including it, right? It's generally not a big problem. Both people are fine with just taking a break for about, I would say on average, 45 to 2 minutes. I think it can go on for that long. It can at least feel like 2 minutes. The actual time on how long a transformation stays up is actually random to some degree as well, although it can't stay up for 1 second. It has some, some parameters it's working within, so it's not going to go down within 1 second. It's not going to stay up for 10 minutes. You can wave shot infinite people here on both sides, either towards this side or towards this side, but this one is so heavily sloped that oftentimes they will fly, like it's so sloped that it will act as them getting pushed off the stage completely and basically no longer touching the ground, which will mean that they land again. And just like we described with the Yoshis, this will mean that they get no hit stun whatsoever. This right here is just a pit. A Peach, for example, can just down smash you and absolutely destroy you with one hit because you can't fly anywhere. Yeah, like just like this. Pikachu can infinite you here with jabs, or at least until the stage goes away. And then you have this thing where you can again hit people against this wall, infinite them. Yeah, it's just kind of an awful stage, all things around. But there's something that's even more game-breaking. But it is the fact that this stage has the worst actual in-game structure of anything possibly conceived by Sakurai. Okay, well, that's not true. The online mode of Ultimate exists, but you can fall through this stage very easily. And I don't just say that. Very many times during tournaments can you fall through this stage.
It's more beneficial for Marth because his F smash goes pretty much almost the entire length.
What?
What? Did he die through the tree?
He just fell through the stage.
That happens.
This is stupid.
But yeah, it's just absolutely awful. It will very, very often lead to lost games when it does happen. Thankfully, you don't really fall through the stage very often. I don't actually think I've ever fallen through a stage through all my years of Melee using Fox, but it can still happen. But somehow, despite all this, there is one more stage that is by far the worst abomination on any competitively legal stage. That is bar none the worst stage in any Smash game that people still actively play on. And it is the goddamn rock transformation. This stage is just horrible, awful. Did I say horrible? It's just downright disgusting. As the CPU there just showed you, down smashing over and over here will yield great results. You can very easily sear to death you in this pit of doom, as we like to call it. You can infinite people here with Pikachu by jabbing them towards here. You can infinite them with Fox here by infiniting here. You can do it up here. You can do it down here. And as you just saw, some grabs behave differently because the platforms are weird. And that can happen where because this one is too heavily sloped, sometimes you will bonk here, and then sometimes you will just land on top of here. And it's not really consistent, and no one really knows what's going to happen. But yeah, here you can infinite them back and forth if you want to, but sometimes weird shit happens and they don't go back and forth. I don't really know. Yeah, this is just an awful stage in every possible way. in case you weren't aware, but there's still plenty more to go through. Hey, this platform, just for the fuck of it, yeah, let's make this sloped too. Just for the hell of it, you know? Yeah, just make it sloped, as if there wasn't enough. This wall right here, also sloped. This stage here, you know, the other one had lips, but this one has even worse of a thing. And as you can see, I can run here infinitely. And it just glitches out for a lot of moves, like Falcon Side B, for example. If you're trying to move from the outer edge here, will fall here. So if you try to like jump here, you might get your input eaten here, or get a double jump, which can kill you. Absolutely screws over things, such as when some person is on the edge here and they're trying to get onto the middle of a stage. And one character can kind of just stand here and, you know, keep them away. Also, the fucking cactus kind of covers characters. That's something I never even thought about until now, but honestly, we've been busy with so much other bullshit on the stage that it makes sense. And that's without even going to the worst part of the stage somehow. The worst part of the stage, in my opinion, is this rock, right? It is heavily sloped here, which again creates issues. It then has this little lip that you again can hit people against. It's also treated as a wall. Then there's an edge here, which means that some characters can actually stall by doing a get up attack like this, and then being pushed off because there's not enough ground here. And there's another fucking wall down here that you can also infinite people against. But this wall is also not completely straight, because that would be too much to have one straight fucking wall on the stage. And then all the issues with Pokemon Stadium's camera get magnified to 10 here, where it's viewed from above, like the camera angle is from above, but because the rock is in the way, you can see even less, and you can basically not see Fox here at all. So it just becomes an absolute shit show when someone is here. And very often, this stage simply turns into one person camping and the other person also camping and just hoping for the rock mode to end. But obviously, having a timeout in the middle of a set can be very, very disruptive, can lose you momentum. And many times, the rock will simply appear, spawn from the earth, and simply stop you from, you know, running past it. It can make for drop edge guards. Drop rest punishes have happened at majors. For example, Hungerbox versus Mango feature that. And yeah, sometimes you're just going to be comboed in the middle of the stage and then you're going to be locked into the pit of doom. But sometimes there's funny shit. It's not the stage I hate in friendlies that much, but obviously it's not a great stage in any way no matter how you slice it. This is definitely the worst stage that has ever existed in competitive Smash. Now, let's talk about the positive news, that we don't have to play on these abominations anymore, because Slippy has, due to actually unrelated circumstances other than balancing, cannot actually load transformations over a rollback. And this means that the stage is permanently stuck in the way it starts, which is a very, very good stage, actually. Definitely not a bad stage whatsoever, and one that I very much enjoy. But sadly, because of Nintendo, we might have to go back to playing on transforming Stadium at some point. And hey, those transformations are good for my character, Fox. And I'm actually very good at them, but I'll be honest and say that I don't miss them. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and let me know if you want more of this, if you want me to do the band stages. Way longer than I expected. Have a great one, and check out my Patreon if you're interested in high-level melee coaching. Comment for the algorithm. Bye.